Today, the president listening to proposals on an overhaul of Dulles International Airport. It is the second meeting on the matter Trump has had this month. The president has previously called for changes to the airport, saying Dulles needs to be rebuilt because it is, quote, a terrible airport. Here to discuss the plans is Washington Post White House reporter Dan Diamond. Dan, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Anya.
So, Dan, earlier this month, the companies pitched the president on their vision of a new look for Dulles. What came out of that meeting, and are there any big updates from today's meeting?
Well, the White House had put out a call for proposals around the country on how companies would improve Dulles. You can go on a federal website, the Department of Transportation website, see some of those ideas, and about 20 companies, 24 companies gave proposals for what they would do. A half dozen companies then met with the president and Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy earlier this month on ideas like building a brand new terminal at Dulles or getting rid of the, quote, people movers, those mobile lounges that are not uniformly popular. And today's meeting, my understanding, is an update, essentially, more ideas for the president, maybe some more discussion of how this would be paid for, because President Trump does not want this to go through Congress, does not want to spend years on this plan. He wants to get it done this term if possible.
And speaking of that, one of the changes he wants is to have Dulles renamed after him, and that would take a congressional approval. What is the likelihood of that happening? And we've seen him already change names of other buildings to be renamed after him, the Kennedy Center, for example. Could the president find a loophole in this law and make that happen?
Well, I think you just alluded to the loophole. He could go put his name, or he could have his deputies put his name on the building and then have that be a fight in the courts. That happened at the Kennedy Center. It happened with the Institute of Peace, where I talked to people at the Institute of Peace who said this is illegal. This has to be an act of Congress. But if you drive down past that building now, it is the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace. And the argument that the Trump administration would make is that President Trump, by doing work on these buildings, that he somehow deserves his name on them. I should say there's been no precedent for that in the past, with sitting presidents moving to brand buildings after themselves.
Right, especially the Kennedy Center is a living memorial.
Right. And the Dulles airport was named for John Foster Dulles, the Secretary of State. So there's already someone who's being honored with that airport.
And what does the timeline look like for this, Dan, to remodel Dulles, and how much impact in the incoming, outcoming flights would it have?
That's a good question. I think that the Trump administration does want to move relatively quickly to pick the various proposals that they want to implement. And I've been told maybe they'll take one idea from one company, another idea from another company. It didn't sound like, when I'd spoken to folks for our story at the Washington Post, that they'd made any decisions yet. But I would imagine in the coming weeks or months, they are going to go public with this. I mean, we know about this because we've reported on it. President Trump has not said, these are the proposals I'm considering yet. And then the goal, I think, would be to start moving ahead well before the end of Trump's term, because he wants to see this done as soon as possible.
And you mentioned how much it would cost in the meeting, that was something they discussed. Would taxpayers be responsible for any of this, and how much would that be?
It's a good question. So the Trump administration has looked at models like a public-private partnership, which has been done at other airports, other facilities around the country. It's possible that some of the companies that stand to gain from a change to Dulles, like United Airlines, might want to put their own money toward a proposal here. But as of last check for our story today, it sounded like the financing was still up in the air.
All right. Washington Post White House reporter Dan Diamond, thanks for joining us, and we appreciate your insights tonight.
Thanks for having me.